All right, so you want to know about dating Polish people. We're diving into a YouTube video by JT, a foreigner who's living in Poland and married to a Polish woman.
He's got a really unique perspective.
Yeah, he's got some really interesting observations, I think, that could give you a real advantage in the dating game.
JT's insider perspective is definitely valuable, but remember, like with any cultural insights, we're dealing with broad strokes here.
Yeah.
Not every Polish person will fit the mold perfectly.
Of course, individual personalities always play a role.
Right.
But JT's video does offer a fascinating peek into some of the cultural values that might come into play when you're dating someone Polish.
Definitely.
One thing he emphasizes is how important Polish culture is to Polish people. And we're not just talking about holidays here. He describes it as being surrounded by Polish shops, eating Polish bread, even cursing in Polish.
That deep connection to heritage is definitely something to be aware of. Imagine you're on a date and they get excited talking about Polish traditions, maybe a childhood memory or a family recipe. It's a sign that their roots run deep.
Yeah.
And understanding that is key to connecting with them on a deeper level.
It reminds me of that saying, you don't just marry the person, you marry their family too.
Right.
Except in this case, you're also dating their culture.
Exactly.
And speaking of families, JT paints a hilarious picture of Polish hospitality. He says you'll be welcomed into their home, and refusing the pierogi is practically a crime.
Think of it this way, that generosity isn't just about being polite. It's a way of showing respect for their traditions and making you feel like you're part of the family. They want you to feel the warmth of their culture, and food is a big part of that.
That makes me think, if someone's not used to that level of hospitality, it might even feel a little overwhelming at first.
It's true. Cultures have different comfort zones when it comes to expressing warmth. But if you embrace it, you might just discover some amazing home cooking and a deeper connection with your date.
For sure.
Now, here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
JT says Polish people are known for being incredibly resourceful, almost like master problem solvers.
So if you're dating a Polish person and you encounter a challenge, chances are they'll already be 10 steps ahead thinking about how to fix it.
Exactly. This resourcefulness can be a major plus in a relationship. They're not likely to shy away from challenges, and they might even surprise you with creative solutions to problems you hadn't even considered. This resourceful attitude also extends to dating itself. Don't be surprised if they come up with unique date ideas or find a way to make even the simplest outings feel special.
That's a really cool perspective. It's like dating someone who's always got a plan B, and maybe even a plan C. But on the flip side, wouldn't that resourcefulness also create high expectations, especially for someone new to the culture?
That's a good point. The key takeaway here is to show that you're willing to put in the effort, too.
Yeah.
They value a partner who's proactive and willing to contribute to the relationship.
So matching their energy is important. Don't be afraid to take initiative and show that you're invested in making things work.
Absolutely. Now, JT also has some insightful advice about communication styles. He warns against reading too much into their sometimes less expressive demeanor.
So don't mistake their reserved communication style for a lack of interest.
Exactly. JT gives the example of one-call-a-day check-ins being perfectly normal in some Polish relationships. This might feel distant to someone who's used to constant communication, but it actually stems from a respect for independence, a key value in Polish relationships.
That's a great example of how cultural differences can easily lead to misunderstandings.
Yes.
So how would someone unfamiliar with this directness navigate a potential misunderstanding?
Clear and open communication is always crucial, but it's even more important when you're dating someone from a different cultural background. If something feels off, don't hesitate to express your feelings and ask for clarification.
Welcome back to our deep dive into dating Polish people. We've been unpacking some really interesting insights from JT, a foreigner living in Poland who's married to a Polish woman.
His perspective is like having a secret decoder ring for Polish dating culture. We were just talking about communication styles and how respecting independence is so important. JT also mentioned something fascinating about how Polish people are changing, especially the younger generation.
He noticed they're more daring, more willing to push boundaries, especially compared to older generations. He even said they poke fun at the stereotypical American can-do attitude, which he found ironic given Polish people are also known for their get-it-done mentality.
That's such an interesting contrast. On one hand, they're known for their resourcefulness and drive.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they're starting to question the relentless pursuit of achievement.
It could be that younger Polish people are finding their own balance.
They're not abandoning that resourceful spirit, but they're channeling it in new ways. It's like they're saying, we can achieve great things, but we also value our personal lives and well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. They're
Yeah.
taking that traditional resourcefulness and applying it to their personal ambitions and happiness.
Exactly. And this evolution in their thinking can be incredibly attractive to someone who values a partner who's both ambitious and well-rounded. Someone who knows how to work hard, but also knows how to enjoy life.
That's a great point. It sounds like dating someone from the younger generation in Poland could be a really dynamic experience. You get that traditional Polish strength and resourcefulness, but with a modern twist.
Absolutely. Now, JT didn't explicitly say this, but based on what he did share, I think there might be some misconceptions people have about dating Polish people, especially when it comes to their communication style.
Like we talked about earlier, their less expressive communication could be misinterpreted as coldness or disinterest.
Right, and that can be a real challenge for someone who's used to a more effusive communication style. But if you understand the cultural context, you realize it's not about a lack of feelings.
Yeah.
It's often just a different way of expressing them.
So patience and understanding are key.
Yeah.
Don't jump to conclusions based on your own cultural expectations.
Exactly. And remember, if you're ever unsure about something, don't be afraid to ask for clarification.
Yeah.
Clear communication can bridge those cultural gaps. Now, another piece of advice JT emphasized was about not being a pushover, particularly for men dating Polish women.
Hmm.
Do you think that advice would apply equally to women dating Polish men?
That's a great question. It does seem like that don't be a pushover advice is directed mostly at men,
Yeah.
but I wonder if the underlying message is more universal.
I think you're onto something. The core message is about confidently expressing your opinions and setting boundaries regardless of gender. It's about being an equal partner in the relationship.
So it's not about fitting into specific gender roles, but rather bringing your authentic self to the relationship.
Yes.
Being strong and independent, but also respectful and considerate.
Exactly. A healthy relationship is built on mutual respect, where both partners feel comfortable expressing themselves without fear of judgment.
JT also talked about how Polish people in general can be shaped by generational trauma and might struggle with self-doubt. That's a powerful reminder that everyone carries their own unique history, and it can impact their relationships in profound ways.
Absolutely. Understanding the historical context can help you be more empathetic and patient with your partner. It's about recognizing that their behaviors and insecurities might stem from deeper-rooted experiences.
And it highlights the importance of being a source of positive reinforcement, celebrating their achievements and having them see their own worth.
Precisely. Sometimes all it takes is that one person who truly believes in them to break free from those limiting beliefs. It's about creating a safe space where they can be vulnerable and know they'll be met with love and encouragement.
JT also brought up this idea that Polish people respond well to mimicking emotions.
Mm.
He described them as being like aluminum warm when you're warm, cold when you're cold.
Mm.
Do you think that kind of emotional mirroring is specific to Polish culture, or is it something we see in other cultures as well?
That's a fascinating observation. I think to some degree, emotional mirroring is a human thing. We naturally pick up on the energy of those around us. But it's possible that it's more pronounced in some cultures than others.
Maybe in Polish culture, where direct communication and emotional expression aren't always the norm, this mirroring becomes a way of understanding each other's feelings.
It's an interesting theory. It's like they're reading between the lines, looking for those nonverbal cues to understand what the other person is feeling. And that can lead to a deep sense of connection, where you feel like your partner truly gets you, even without you having to say a word.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's like speaking a secret language of emotions.
Speaking of unspoken communication, JT mentioned how his wife would sometimes take charge of tasks he hadn't gotten around to quickly enough for her. It sounds like Polish people really value initiative and a proactive approach, both in daily life and in relationships.
So it's not just about being supportive emotionally, but also being a partner who takes action and contributes to shared goals.
Exactly. It's about showing that you're not passive or indifferent. You're an active participant in building a life together.
So to recap what we've learned so far, respect their culture, don't be a pushover, be their biggest cheerleader, and be proactive. It sounds like those are some pretty solid foundations for any relationship, honestly.
I couldn't agree more. And don't forget the importance of open-mindedness, clear communication, and patience, especially when navigating cultural differences. Now, we've talked a lot about the positive aspects of dating Polish people, but are there any potential challenges or things to be mindful of?
That's a great question. It's important to remember that, like in any relationship, challenges are inevitable, and cultural differences can sometimes lead to misunderstandings or conflicts if they're not addressed openly and respectfully.
Exactly. One potential challenge JT mentioned was that Polish families tend to focus more on criticism than praise. That could be jarring for someone coming from a culture where positive reinforcement is more common.
I can see how that could lead to some friction. Someone might misinterpret that direct feedback as being harsh or unsupportive.
It's all about understanding the cultural context. In Polish culture, that directness might be seen as a way of helping you improve, not as a personal attack.
So communication is key here, right? Talking about your expectations and understanding their perspective can help bridge those gaps.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not about changing who they are, but finding ways to navigate those differences respectfully and constructively. Now, another point JT made that I think is worth revisiting is how younger generations are pushing boundaries and challenging traditional expectations.
Right. You talked about how they're more open-minded and willing to question the status quo. Does that mean those cultural differences we've been discussing are becoming less relevant?
It's not that simple. While it's true that cultures evolve, certain values and traditions tend to endure, even as new generations emerge. Think of it as a tapestry with both traditional threads and modern ones woven together.
So it's not an either, but rather an and. You have the enduring cultural influences and the evolving perspectives of the younger generation all existing simultaneously.
Exactly. And that creates a dynamic and fascinating dating landscape. It's about recognizing those layers of complexity and approaching each individual with curiosity and openness.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I feel like I've learned so much about Polish culture and the nuances of navigating a cross-cultural relationship.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's still more to uncover.
You're absolutely right. We've only scratched the surface here. And that's the beauty of exploring different cultures. There's always more to discover, more to learn, and more to appreciate.
Welcome back to our final part of our deep dive into dating Polish people. We've covered so much ground, from generational shifts in communication styles to the importance of resourcefulness and respecting independence.
It's been fascinating to unpack these cultural nuances, especially through the lens of JT's experiences as a foreigner married to a Polish woman.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to one of JT's key pieces of advice that we've touched on a few times. Don't be a pushover. It seems to be a recurring theme, particularly for men dating Polish women.
Yeah, JT even uses that term szlop, which basically means like a softie in Polish. It highlights how much Polish culture values strength and assertiveness.
But as we've discussed, it's not about being aggressive or controlling.
Right.
It's about having a strong sense of self and confidently expressing your opinions and boundaries.
Exactly. Think of it this way. Imagine you're on a date and they're sharing their passionate views on Polish politics.
Yeah.
Or maybe even their favorite soccer team. They're not looking for someone to just blindly agree. They want a partner who can engage in a lively debate, who brings their own perspective to the table.
So how do you strike that balance? How do you assert yourself without coming across as, disrespectful or insensitive?
That's where communication and emotional intelligence are key.
Yeah.
It's about choosing your battles wisely, expressing your needs clearly, and being mindful of their feelings. Remember, strong doesn't have to mean loud or argumentative. It can be quiet confidence.
Yeah.
A sense of self-assuredness that comes from knowing your worth.
It's interesting because JT also stressed the importance of being your partner's biggest cheerleader, especially in a culture where positive reinforcement might not be as readily given.
Right.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between being assertive and supportive.
Absolutely. And that support goes beyond just praising their achievements.
Yeah.
It's about believing in their potential, supporting their dreams, and helping them see the best in themselves, even when they might be struggling with self-doubt.
You know, it makes me think about how dating someone from a different culture is like embarking on an exciting adventure.
Oh, yeah.
There are new landscapes to explore, new customs to learn, and potentially even new languages to speak, both literally and figuratively.
I love that analogy. And just like with any adventure, there will be challenges and unexpected detours along the way.
Of course.
But that's part of what makes it so enriching. You're constantly learning, growing, and expanding your understanding of the world and yourself.
Speaking of challenges, are there any, practical aspects of dating in Poland beyond the cultural nuances that someone should be aware of?
Yeah.
Are there any specific customs or etiquette rules to keep in mind?
While Poland is becoming increasingly modern, it's always a good idea to be mindful of traditional etiquette.
Mm.
For instance, dressing well for a date shows respect, and being on time is highly valued.
Those seem like pretty universal good manners, really.
They are. And while chivalry isn't dead in Poland, it is evolving. You might offer to pay for the first date, but don't be surprised if they insist on splitting the bill.
Okay.
It reflects that emphasis on equality and independence we've been talking about.
So being observant and adaptable are key.
Hmm.
What about like gift giving? Are there any specific Polish traditions around that?
It's always thoughtful to bring a small gift when visiting someone's home,
Okay.
like flowers or chocolates.
Yeah.
And if you're invited for a meal, offering to help with the preparation or cleaning up is always appreciated.
Hmm.
It's a gesture that speaks volumes about your respect for their customs
Right.
and your willingness to be a part of their world.
It sounds like a lot of it boils down to being your best, most respectful
Right.
self and being genuinely interested in learning about their culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Polish people are generally warm and welcoming, and they appreciate genuine effort.
JT mentioned how younger generations are, breaking free from some traditional expectations.
Right.
Does that mean, like, the cultural differences we've been discussing are becoming less relevant?
It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
While cultures evolve, certain values and traditions tend to endure, even as new generations emerge. Think of it as a tapestry with both traditional threads and modern ones woven together, creating a beautiful and complex whole.
So it's not an either, but rather an and.
Right.
You have those enduring cultural influences and the evolving perspectives of the younger generation.
Yeah.
It sounds like dating someone Polish today offers the best of both worlds.
I think that's a great way to put it. And it reinforces why approaching any cross-cultural relationship with curiosity and open-mindedness is so important. You get to experience that fascinating blend of tradition and modernity and learn so much along the way.
This deep dive has honestly been such a journey. It makes you realize how much we take for granted about our own dating culture until we see it through the eyes of someone from a different background.
It's true, and these insights can apply to any cross-cultural relationship, not just those involving Polish people. Yeah. The key takeaways are universal. Respect, communication, empathy, and a willingness to embrace the beautiful complexities of human connection.
It sounds like a recipe for not just a successful relationship, but a truly enriching life experience.
Exactly.
So for anyone listening who's intrigued by the idea of dating someone Polish or even just exploring other cultures, what, final words of wisdom would you offer?
Embrace the adventure. Be open-minded and curious. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone and challenge your assumptions. You might just discover a whole new world of love, connection, and personal growth.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into dating Polish people. We hope you've enjoyed the journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on our next adventure into the world of cultural exploration.